welcome back to another glorious episode of Spirits, Angels, and Guides. Oh my, I'm Nancy Christine Brady.
And I'm Tara Diana, and we have got you, my friend. So grab your favorite bevy and let's get it.
Tara, I'm so excited for today's episode. One of the things you always get all of our sort of helpers saying to you and I is share more personal stuff, share more personal stuff. So, guess what, listeners? You're going to hear our ghost stories because it is the month of October and it's Tara's and my favorite season of Halloween. So, we are going to share some haunting stories with you tonight.
A haunting we will go.
Hmm, I like that.
Okay, let's start off. Let's, Nan, start off with a little bit of the macabre. Let's talk a little bit about ghosts versus spirits. We've touched on this before, but I
Yes.
feel like it's super important to kind of give the definition of what a ghost is in our humble opinion and what a spirit is. And for me, and then you can give your opinion, a ghost is a residual imprint. It is an imprint that stays basically the same. You'll see it at the same time. You'll see it doing the same thing. It will not communicate with you. It will not follow you anywhere. It's like waking up in the middle of the night and going to the top of the stairs to use the washroom, and there standing is a lady in a red dress with long black hair, and she's elegant and she's poised and she does nothing but just stand there. And you can walk right past her and she won't even acknowledge you. That's an imprint. And some people say it could be she's imprinted in this particular space because she died there tragically, or because the home meant something to her there. And there's a host of reasons why ghosts imprint in a certain space, a host of them. But most of the time, it's because the area means something to them and they just happen to be there and you happen to be able to see it. And there ain't nothing freakier than waking up to go pee and seeing a woman with long black hair and a red dress at the top of your landing and being like, whoa, that's not their purpose. It's just a residual thing. And you just happen to have your guard down and you can see it.
Right.
Spirit is a spirit. Now you tell what a spirit is, baby.
So in my opinion, and I believe Tara and I are on the same page with ghosts and spirits. Spirits are intelligent communication from the other side.
Okay.
And so, often, for example, when you're going to a medium to have a reading, we are talking to spirit. However, what we're talking about tonight is when spirit comes to us and we're a little startled by it. So you don't have to necessarily do what Tara and I do, but suddenly grandpa shows up and the rocking chair starts going. You suddenly have evidence and proof that there's intelligent interaction. This is spirit. They often come in, they check on us. Sometimes they're mischievous. Sometimes they will come in and stir the pot and hide your rings and do different things like that. So that is kind of where we are. A lot of people generally, though, Tara, what I find is they will call spirit a ghost
Yeah.
because they've interacted with it. But this is just kind of how Tara and I differentiate the two terms, spirit versus ghost.
The other thing, that I just want to put out there is that a lot of times people will be like, oh, there's got to be a spirit in my house. And nine times out of 10, it's actually negative energy, residual energy that people are feeling from the house itself, or it'll be a ghost. It will be a residual point ghost, right? Like, and what I mean by a residual point is it's just a ghost that's here and they can feel the energy because they're walking through it all the time. They're around it all the time. And that ghost can still come and go. So, l- tell me some of the places that you've seen ghosts. Not necessarily the stories, but tell me some spooky places you've seen ghosts.
Oh, well, I've seen them in cemeteries. I've seen them in, well, an old 1910 house I used to live in Victoria, BC, Canada. There's also a castle there that's said to be haunted that I've seen a lot of residual energy. Um,
That castle, didn't that have an actual spirit though?
it has an actual spirit, but it's actually got a lot of residual energy as well. So,
Yeah.
and that's what I find some of the places where I've moved in and through, I've been like, yep, that's spirit. Oh, nope, that's residual energy. But you can see them everywhere. Let me share one fun story.
Cool.
So we went, my husband and I, to Baltimore to see his best friend, and he was doing his practicum at John Hopkins Hospital. And so he lived in this old tobacco factory that they had taken and made a luxury hotel on the bottom and apartments upstairs. And so we're sitting on the dock and watching the tugboats come in, and we're having a little margarita, our feet hanging over. And I looked at my husband and his friend and his wife, and I said, that guy's been standing there a long time. And they're like, what guy? I'm like, that guy. Can't you see him? He's wearing like an old sort of newspaper boy hat, and he's got a newspaper under his arm. And they're like, there's nobody standing there. I'm like, yeah, he's been standing there a long time. And I turn around and he's gone. So having gone to visual arts college, I sketched a quick picture and I said, this is who I saw. And they're like, no, Nancy, there was no one there. So in Baltimore, it's very cool because they have all these row houses, and in the bottom of them, you hop from pub to pub to pub, and then people live above them.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of a pub, and we go and we order our drink. And my friend's wife had said, oh my God, Nancy, come here. I walk over, and above the bar is this big 4 foot by 5 foot painting of the guy that I saw. She goes, that's the guy in the picture. And she pulls it out because she drew it. Or so I drew it. And so she had put it in her purse, and she pulls it out and she goes, look, look. And the bartender just laughs. And he goes, yeah. He goes, that's the old owner. I said, yeah. See, I told you I saw the guy down there. And he goes, yeah, he committed suicide 5 years ago. People see him
Oh,
all the time. So is that residual? Is that spirit? Personally, it was a lot of residual energy. Like, it didn't have any interaction.
yeah.
Um, it was just, I think it was his favorite place. The more that I sort of researched into it, the more I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he used to go, he'd read the paper, he'd tuck it under his arm, and he'd watch the tugboats come in. That was residual energy. But
Well, that is a perfect example though of it being in a space that, open, sunny day, good stuff. You're looking around, sad scenario, but there they are, like right there. Right there. So, I've done a few interesting things. I've been on lots of ghost tours and things. And so I've seen them in cemeteries. I've seen them in like old, old, old cemeteries, mostly residual energy. I've dealt with spirit in a physical way in a house in Burnaby, Sepperly House, an old house. We've stayed actually in a townhouse in a hotel setting. I don't know how to explain this. In Victoria, we stayed in where uh poor Delynn, my assistant, oh bless her soul, she had to sleep with me in this room, and spirits were just a knocking. Window shades were being moved, doors were being opened and shut, and she slept through, like, I would say 90% of it, but what she was awake for, she was like, um I've also had the experience of going down underneath the place called the Giggle Dam in Port Coquitlam, BC. It was a dinner dinner theater, and there was some kind of altercation murder down below, and the body was down in this crawl space, and I went down there and was like, oh my goodness. And other people don't always feel what we feel, but there's been, there's several different things. Um, but the one of the biggest experience I had, and I'm going to set it up for everyone, okay? And this is how it kind of went. So, I live very close to Burnaby Village Museum. This is a museum that has a lot of old buildings, like very old buildings in it. I know that I think they have something like 15 buildings, and they all have kind of residual energy attached to them, some more than others, like the textile store, the school, the church, and two of the
right, like, it's
yeah,
like
it's very vintage, very, very cool. And they celebrate like Halloween, and they celebrate Christmas, and it's so cool. Actually, we had our wedding pictures done there. Um,
really.
yeah, yeah, we did. It was super cool. I also left my son there at one of the haunted houses during a Halloween event. It's a long story, and we won't do
I'm
that.
sure Ryan appreciated that.
Yeah, I don't know if he ever forgive Lynn White and I. She's another medium, and I went there. So they also have surrounding that area, it's in Deer Lake Park. So surrounding that area, they have some other old homes that were there. So one of them I have gone to several times at night. I rarely go there during the day. I need to go there at night. And it's called the land is called Fair Acres. It used to be an old strawberry farm, and the house itself is called the Sepperly House, and it was owned by Henry and Grace Sepperly. And this is back in the, I believe they bought it as a strawberry farm in 1909 and they built on it in 1911. Anyway, my sister and her friend and I did this tour years ago. Like we're talking 20 plus years ago. And we did this tour and because we could get into the house. Now, this is before I was necessarily quite as deep into this work as I am now. So it was just a fun haunted house. And the cool thing was, is before we did this tour, I had done a walk around there and in the dark, and I had seen this image in the window, and I had no background on the place at all or anything, but I had seen this image, and it was like a woman in one of those old, it was like your typical, I'm not kidding you, my friends, it was like a typical ghost story thing where you see a woman in a window in an old vintage white nightgown, and but her hair was in this weird bun thingy. Anyway, and I saw her walk by the window a couple of times, pitch black place, not anything happening there, and I was with someone else and they saw it too. And so I thought that was super cool. So when this opportunity came up to go to Separately House and do this tour, I said to my sister, we need to go. Now, my sister is very psychic. She doesn't claim to be, but she is. And so she can pick up things as well. So we did this tour. And during this tour, they tell us all this really cool stuff. The tour is at night, and there's quite a few of us there. So they take us through the basement of the house, which I didn't feel much of anything, to be honest with you. It was very cool. At this point, I was already picking up certain things in my work and stuff like that. And then we went up to the main floor. Again, it was your typical old vintage kind of early 1900s kind of home. And then we went up to the attic. Now, for whatever reason, Nan, the attic was it. Everything happened in the attic. Everything from the owner of the house, Grace. It wasn't her husband who owned the house. It was not Henry. It was Grace. And when Grace passed away, she left it to Henry and said, if you sell this place, you've got to go build. She loved kids. You got to go build this big park in Stanley Park for kids. And he didn't do that. He built a
Oh,
smaller one somewhere else, but he built a smaller one. And that's why they say that she haunts the place. That's the image that they say I saw in the window. Now, I've seen this image several times now out there, and maybe now we can go out there this Halloween. But I've seen her walk across and just walk, no engagement, and not touching the ground or anything like that. So you know she's a residual ghost. Walk across the porch. Seen her in 3 different windows in the house. Like I've seen this, and so have other people with me. So that to me is cool. But this house, when we got up to the attic, they start telling us about how it was bought by private owners after Henry sold it, and it was a tuberculosis house for the Vancouver General Hospital at one point. So the attic was used to house all the people with tuberculosis, like shit energy, right? There are people dying, and that's a lot of sadness. And then from there it was bought by a bunch of monks who I believe they were called the, let me double check, but the Order of Saint Benedict. Yeah, the Order of Saint Benedict. So it was owned by a bunch of monks. Nothing creepy I could find about the monks though, and no one mentioned anything. Then it became, and I have to read this, in the 1950s, a religious group, Temple of the Abundant Life, of More Abundant Life, which a cult led by William Franklin Woosley, who called himself Archbishop John the First. This is where it gets creepy as hell. So before I go any further into that, I want you to picture a whole bunch of us following this woman up into this attic, and it's dark. They have zero lights on in there. They give you these little dinky flashlights. So we start walking to the rooms. I have not before, not since, been in a room or a space with such dank energy.
wow.
Like you're waiting through quicksand kind of energy.
But seriously, like tuberculosis, I can't even say it, TB, and a cult, like, of course, there's going to be residual nasty
And
energy.
this cult was like bad. They used to have a school in it, and I'm trying to remember what it was called, Children of the Temple, where they were taught they would die if they didn't believe everything that this archbishop was saying. And they had the cruelest punishments. Like, I'm not even going to get into it. They also had this archbishop guy taught like a sexual hygiene class individually to the students. So this was not a good place. This is one of the only places, Nan, in all, I've been doing this work for forever, but one of the only places that I have physically felt I was touched by spirit. And we walked into a room in the attic, and actually it was just the three of us that walked into the room. I don't know if everyone was ahead of us, behind us, whatever, but they weren't in the room with us. And I actually felt as though my head had been pulled back and my hair had been yanked.
Wow.
And I actually like, ow, or whatever I said. Ah. And
Yeah.
my sister's like, what is the matter with you? But she felt the energy. Her friend saw my head move back.
Wow.
So it was an actual physical encounter. Now, I don't hold a lot of energy about that kind of stuff. I don't believe spirit can throw you down the stairs, because they can't. I don't believe they'll put you in front of um a bus or anything. I don't believe they can pick up an axe and throw it at you. Like, none of that stuff I believe in, but I physically felt. And I can you felt spirit come through you, right? I've had spirit actually walk through me in a documentary at a haunted train station in Port Moody, British
That's
Columbia.
cool.
Like, it went through four of us and knocked the poor sound man right off his feet at the end of it. So we're in this room, it's dank energy, and I could feel this. And between being angry, because I'm a Scorpio, and being slightly frightened, not gonna lie, I was like, what the F is going on here? That day, my sister's friend booked it out of the room. She booked it right back down the stairs. And there was still a whole other things to do up there. It was probably one of the most freakiest things, and I had chills the rest of the time up there. And actually, I came downstairs quite quickly as well after that, because that was just it was just a kind of a yucky experience. And like I said, I've
Yeah.
had spirit walk right through me and it didn't bother me, but having all that energy up there and then the spirit come through and say, hey, I want your attention, because that's why I believe they do certain things, like come too close to you so you feel them,
Yeah.
shivers and all that stuff, is because they want your attention more
Yeah.
than anything else, because spirit is not evil. Spirit's not here to hurt you, but they are very good at scaring the bejesus out of you if they want.
Especially if you're not someone who does what Tara and I do, and you're not used to having spirits sort of interact with you on that level, right?
Right. And if you've watched the podcast that Nan and I did on my experience at the Zach Baggins haunted museum in Las Vegas, again, the only room that I felt supreme spiritual energy, and that was spirit, that wasn't residual. Grace is residual, walking back and forth and in the windows and stuff. She's like, it's like she's paroling her house.
Yeah.
Was that Dr. Death. That was the only place that I actually felt like there was spirit energy in there. So, but that was creepy for me. And you guys got to go there. They have these big, huge trees. If you're local, if not, look it up. Big, huge trees. It's an old kind of Victorian looking house with the big patio, which I love, and that kind of creepy energy.
That's a great story.
It is. It was creepy. And go in the dark and go at night and go with your little flashlight and your big pit bull, and you'll be safe. Nan, tell us the story though about that castle and that energy and how it freaked out your
Yeah,
husband.
that particular story, my husband and I went for our 10-year anniversary. We've been married 28, so it was quite a while ago. And when we first got married, he was like, okay, your woo-woo stuff is kind of scary to me. I don't understand it, but it's your thing, so I celebrate you. But stuff would happen, like my grandpa would visit and our rocking chair would just start rocking, and the radio station would change to his favorite AM country station, and my husband would just be like, that is just bizarre. So fast forward, we go to Ireland, which is like so old. Like the energy there alone, it's magical, it's mystical, it's one of those things. So we decide to stay at this one bed and breakfast, and we're driving down this teeny teeny little lane, and same thing, big honking trees that reach over and make like a little tunnel that you go down, and we drive past.
Perfectly spooky.
Perfectly spooky. We drive down the road, and then all of a sudden it opens up and there's some sheep in the pasture and there's this beautiful house. And it's like, it's from the 1800s. Like it was really one of those old houses where ivy was growing up and a bright red double set of doors. And they welcome us. They had a peat fire going. They made some cheese and wine, and we sat in front of the peat fire and visited. It was lovely. So it's time to turn in for the evening, and we ask the host, what is this big ruins of castle that you have behind the house? And they're like, we don't know. The house itself is 300 years old, and the castle predates that, but it's still run in the family. I was like, oh gosh, like you think you would want to know more about this, right?
Right?
Energy around the castle the next day when we walked was palpable. Like, think about the generations of energy in the earth and around that castle. I digress. So we're going upstairs to bed, and it's those old big feather mattresses, right? And so we crawl into it, and it's cold. Like, you get the big feather ticks. There's no heat, there's no fireplace. Like, you just got to put 25 pounds of blanket on in order to go to
Oh.
bed. And we're snuggled in, and suddenly my husband says, Nancy, someone just sat on my feet. Now, if there's not anything to get your blood going faster and like, I shot up thinking there was a real person in the room. He's terrified because there's a spirit person in the room. And I sit up and I look, and I can see her. He can't see her. He can feel her sitting on his
Yeah.
feet. And she looks at me, goes, how's your stay, dear? I just It's very lovely, but you're terrifying my husband right now. You need to leave. And it was hilarious, but it was a different because she was a generational spirit checking in, and she was still hosting.
Yeah.
Like, there was no harm meant in it. It was kind of, but like literally when it was time in the middle of the night to go to the washroom, we were both like, should we go together? Like, it was just, do you want me to hold your hand and get you over there? But
It's funny that even as a medium, that was a long time ago, so you may not have been fully into your mediumship, but oh, okay, wait a second. There is something a little creepy, so maybe we should just go together to the washroom, right?
And it was just a beautiful trip, and you got as you went through all these different places. Like, we went and we saw one place, and it was crazy. It was a jail, but it was in the center of this courtyard. And it was not in a room, it was not in a building. So imagine these concreted out caves just with bars on the front, and that was the jail in this tiny town.
Ooh.
It was atrocious, the energy. And
Mm,
it was very, very similar as well. Like, there was a lot of interactive spirit energy there. People had claimed to be touched, same with you, hair pulled, different things like that. But what I felt more was the residual energy, just the heaviness, because people basically got put in there and left,
yeah.
right? They weren't fed, they weren't watered. Same with some of the castles that we toured. Like, there was just a tube, and people will get turfed down the tube. And it was like this cave into the bowels of a castle. It's like,
Oh, dear.
yeah, it was very interesting. So a lot of residual energy around there, but creepy.
Creepy. That is it. The things that freak me out the most, Nan, are the ones that I'm not, you're not really expecting. Sometimes you go to places that are supposed to be haunted and stuff, and you sort of expect things. So it's not quite as freaky, but that and forgive me, everyone. I will find it out and put it in the comments, the name of the location that we were at in Victoria when we went there. My good friend will know it. But my poor assistant, I'm not kidding you. The energy was so crazy. And at night, we would all go to bed, and there was people sleeping on the couch. We had a lot of people with us, like, not gonna lie, we went on a big trip. And so we all stayed, and it was a townhouse on the in the on the property of a hotel. Okay.
Okay.
So, it was very cool. Very, again, Victoria is very Victorian feeling. And every single person there, I was there with two other mediums and myself, and then some what we call muggle people, people who don't feel the energy the way we do. So one of them being my assistant and others being just our friends. And they were freaking out. They were
Yeah.
freaking out, because it's creepy. The other place I had a really cool experience was in, Arthur Findlay College in England. So,
Oh,
this is what it's like the Harry Potter Hogwarts of the spiritual community in this lifetime, and we went there, a good friend of mine, psychic medium Paula Gill, and I went there on a journey, and, more for her experience than mine. So what I mean by I'd never been there before, but I did all the work and she still wanted to have some more kind of aha moments. And boy, did they give them to us.
really?
Siri going off in the middle of the night after Paula's turned off her phone, like shut her phone completely off. And Siri pipes up and starts talking to Paula. Our door creeping open every night by like this much. Bird at 2 in the morning sitting on our windowsill singing, but there's no bird, but we can hear it at the windowsill at 2 in the morning singing to us. Our phones, like I said, going on and off, orbs flying in the room like crazy. And none of that was expected. Was it creepy? It was, because that's a lot of energy, and you had to go out of your room and down the hall to the washroom. And
Oh, that was so
oh,
scary.
it was, and this big, because you're in a castle, like literally, Arthur Finley is a massive castle, an
Yeah.
old castle. And all those things happening, your heart, even though you might be used to things like that happening sometimes, like my phone turning has turned on before, for sure, and I've received a phone call I needed to get. Um, but when they happen, like for that split second, your heart stops, your
Oh, for
mind
sure.
races, and you're like, "What the fuck?" Like, oh my God, that is freaky as hell.
Yeah. That would have startled me too. And especially when you're in your like really peaceful, I'm gonna go to sleep, and suddenly Siri starts talking to you. That's terrifying.
Got that moment where you're like totally like sleepy, and you're like, what? And then you're like, what is going on? Right. And what's the attention for? Like, why do they need our attention? What are they trying to do? And again, I've never believed that spirit is evil at all. But they do have intention. They do want to get you, they want you to do some bidding for them.
So here's a question, because it's very you read in a lot of the different books that the very common haunting hour is like 3 a.m., 2 a.m. What's your thoughts on that?
Do you know, I've always said that the witching hour, the way you're going to see the most spirits is between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And
Yeah.
I believe the veil is the thinnest at that time. So it's easier for spirit to come through because our subconscious is so deep. We are so deep in sleep. At least not me anymore, but most people are so deep in sleep that they are not going to fight anything. That's when we usually feel, see, and wake up and know spirit. And sometimes we'll remember it and sometimes we won't. But spirit definitely likes nighttime. Doesn't matter where in the world it's nighttime, but likes nighttime because our subconscious isn't going to fight it.
Yeah, we're more open to being receptive, right?
Being receptive is the right word. Just being able to be like, whether you're screaming, crying, or laughing, you're open to receiving. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is why as a child I slept with a nightlight.
Me too. That's not a lie, Nan. I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out a way to get me to sleep for the longest time. We tried door open, light on, door open, light on, door closed, light on, light off, door open. Like we tried all these different things, and for the longest time, I would crawl into my parents. My parents had this ugly floor, like this vinyl floor on their bedroom, and then they had this weird ass blue throw rug they had on there is like this funky light blue, kind of like this is my honey bun, but kind of like this blue color shag on their floor. Isn't that
Nice.
weird, honey? Um, but they had I would crawl in there and sleep on their floor once I thought they were asleep. I didn't sleep for a long time, and it turned out to be door open, light off.
Okay.
until I hit my teens.
You know, Tara, this subject is so entertaining. I think we need to do a part two, but I know we're running out of time. Um, so for those listeners listening, thank you for joining us for today's episode, Spirit Gang. We hope you enjoyed diving in. We're going to come back with a part two. So don't forget to join us for next week's episode to get more spooky stories and guidance.
I love spooky stories. Make sure you're following us on IG for updates, behind the scene peeks, and a chance to ask Nan your burning questions I might come into. But we want to give you some good old spiritual advice. So make sure you come on. We're going to start answering your questions at the end of every episode. We're going to pick one or two and we're just going to answer them. But we need to get them from you so that Nan can answer them and I can cheer her on.
Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our journey and our shenanigans. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep shining your light, everyone.
Of course, don't forget to give us the reviews, though, the likes and the love. Share us with your friends, your family, anyone you think that would love to join our spirit gang. We'll see you next time on Spirit Angels and Guides. Oh my.
Bye, everyone.